Hello, my name is nice to meet you. And now we are here to doing social research, which are in purpose of finding our identification. And what's your name?
My name is Lotus.
Mm. And where are you born?
I was given born in Hong Kong.
How about your parents?
Oh, my parents, they were given born in China.
Oh. And how long have you been staying in Hong Kong?
Since I was given born. Like for 20 years, 22.
Then, as your parents are born in China, and so have you been to China or lived in China for a long period?
I have been to China for short period. For example, like in Lunar China Chinese New Year, we will go back and like visit our relatives. So I will stay there for about 2 weeks.
Then, how do you define yourself? A Hong Kongese or Chinese or any other identification?
So I would define myself as Hong Kongese.
And do you think that there are any different characteristics between the Hong Kongese and Chinese? Yes.
Sure, I think like there are many differences between the characters of like Hong Kongese and Chinese. For Hong Kong people, I think like we are more polite and open-minded. We would like think critically. But for Chinese, they are mostly, from my point of view, they are not that polite, and they are not that open-minded in a lot of aspects. Also, like they will think in one way instead of in different angles. Yeah.
And why do you define yourself as a Hong Kongese but not Chinese?
I think like first the reason is I was given born in this land and I live here for over 20 years, so I have a sense of belongings in Hong Kong. And the second reason is I think it will attribute to the education that I received. For example, like cause I will sometimes write letters to my cousins who study in China, and like I will discover like our thinking, like the way that we think is very different in a lot of aspects. For example, like they will agree with the teacher, like agree with whatever thing that the teachers told them. But like in Hong Kong, we encourage critical thinking, right? Sometimes we will like think if the teacher what they're talking about is correct or not. We will go to find information by ourselves to prove like whether the teacher like what he or she said is true or not. Sometimes we will even like challenge them. For example, in my secondary school, we do have like student and teacher debates once a year. So that I think like our mindset is really different.
Yes. And are you totally declare the identity of Chinese?
I would say like if you want me to define myself like how many percentage I think I'm Chinese, I would say about 40% that I'm Chinese, cause like Hong Kong is on the Chinese is only a special administrative regions under China, like so I would define 40%. But like I think due to the culture or like history of Hong Kong, cause Hong Kong was once UK's colony, so we do is I think is colonies for over 100 years. So like we do affected by the UK's cultures a lot. So I think like after the handover to China, I would think about 40%.
40%. And how the first 40% come from? You think you are
I think like we look alike. Like for the Chinese and Hong Kongese, we look alike. That's the first reason. And the second reason is like we are using Cantonese in Hong Kong, right?
Yeah.
But for some parts in China, they are using Cantonese as well. For example, Guangzhou, those areas. And then the third part will be like I don't know, like maybe the food that we share are almost the same, cause like yeah, the Shanghai food, which is like very popular in Hong Kong, the noodles, yeah. So I would say it's from the culture that we shared.
And in this way, let me give you a situation question. When you are watching the Olympic competition, you think that you are Chinese or Hong Kongese?
I will like when I watch it, I'm not specifically like thinking whether I'm a Chinese or Hong Kongese, but I won't be so proud.
You won't be
Yeah.
so proud
Yeah, because
of
if you
Chinese?
ask me, like, I won't be so proud because I consider myself as Hong Kongese instead of Chinese. So when the Chinese, like, they hold the Olympics, I won't feel so proud of, like, because it's like none of my business. Hong Kong didn't take a large part or a major part in those games. Yeah.
Okay. And what kinds of factors that you will be accounted when you are identifying yourself? In other words, what shaped your identification?
I think what shaped my identification
Yes,
is the sense of belonging. Firstly, like, because I spend most of the time in Hong Kong, so it really does matter to my self-identification as a Hong Kongese. Secondly, I think like it's the education I received. As I said before, like the education system in Hong Kong is different from that in China. For example, in Hong Kong, we receive a lot of Western culture. For example, like the knowledge from America, from Western countries, from foreign countries. But like the education system in China, they are relatively like narrow to the old history of China, or like I don't know. I would say like our education system is more open-minded, like in many different angles and more globalized. But for China, their education system would be like more narrow and shallow. Maybe, yeah. That's what I think. And thirdly, like what helps my identification and what shapes my identification, I would say like being a Hong Kongese is different, I think. Like, for example, Hong Kong is a special administrative region in China. It's different of like being in Guangzhou, because in Guangzhou it's not a special administrative region. In Hong Kong we have like one country, two system. We can like have our sovereignty over our land within our internal affairs. We can like have our own bureaucracy. We could have our own law, for example, the basic law. But from Guangzhou, they're under China, so they must like keep on practicing the China's law. So I think like that's the differences, because the system they are much different, and like people are affected by the environment, and what cultivated people is the environment around them. In Hong Kong, I think it's the political policy, is the social relations between different classes, and also maybe the environment, like the Western environment that cultivated by UK. Like you can say, like someone told me that like what Hong Kong is different from Chinese. Like how can they define a person when they both speak Cantonese, but how can they define whether like this one is from Hong Kong or that one is from Guangzhou? Is like usually Hong Kongese will involve a lot of English in their sentence. So I would say like our sense of belonging or the education system or the environment in Hong Kong is unique to cultivate our identity as a Hong Kongese. So it's pretty much like very unique among other cases. So I think it's this unique environment cultivated my sense of like belonging to this land as a Hong Kongese instead of Chinese.
I see your point. And with the identity of a Hong Kongese, so have you ever participated in some Hong Kong affairs, such as some movements or any?
Yeah, sure. Like, cause when that time, the China they want to impose compulsory national education in primary school. Yeah, at that time I do go on the street and protest for that, cause like I don't think, cause my cousin, she studied in China and she never know about the June 4th massacre, or she never know about like the corruption inside China, and I don't want that to happen in Hong Kong. So I go on the street and protest for the policy, and actually it's like not reasonable for them to impose such education like compulsorily in Hong Kongese, because it's our internal affair. Under the like Hanover, the contract that they signed with the UK, they don't have that rights to do so. So I stand on the street to protest for better futures of Hong Kong. And secondly, recently I participated in the movement of like, maybe you heard of it, it's the umbrella movement. So it's about like, we won the universal suffrage in 2007 for like Hong Kong people to select our own self-administrated of Hong Kong. So I think it's our own affair as well. Like, I think when we go on the street, why the Hong Kong people will go on the street and protest? Because if you ever participated in any movement, you know that it's not enjoyable, it's hard, and also it's like not for fun. It's a pretty serious things for Hong Kong people. I mean, like, why we all go on the street is like, Hong Kong people, we are proud of being Hong Kongese, and we want to make these lands better for the future development or for our next generation. We want our lands to be run under Hong Kongese, yeah, to be like our destination is under our hand instead of like China's. Because like the law of the Hanover, we still have 15 years to continue to run our own affairs. So I don't think like it's right for them to do such things.
Okay, and do you think that there are any other responsibilities of being a Hong Kongese?
Sure, I think like being a Hong Kongese, as Hong Kong is pretty much like the tourism is very popular, right? It's the mainstream of Hong Kong's economy, like where the money comes from. So I think being a Hong Kongese, we do have responsibility of treating the foreign visitors nicely when they comes to Hong Kong. Like we may introduce them some few places when they ask for advice, or like when they ask us like how to go to some place on the street, we may like direct them to that place. So I do think like as a Hong Kongese, we do have some responsibility like towards our role to treat the visitors nicely in Hong Kong. And secondly, like apart from the economic aspect, I think for the political aspect, we do have the responsibility to participate in a movement like that for the better well-being of Hong Kong. Yeah. For example, the two movements I mentioned before.
Yes, okay. That's all my question, and thanks for your helping. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.